The hum of conversation and the occasional clink of glasses filled the first-class cabin. Ava Carter barely had time to adjust her seatbelt when a sharp voice sliced through the air. "Miss, I need to see your ticket." Ava blinked, looking up into the rigid expression of a flight attendant, Deborah Miles. The woman's smile was tight, polite in appearance but sharp beneath the surface. "I already scanned it at boarding," Ava said, shifting uncomfortably. "I need to verify it again," Deborah pressed, her tone just a fraction too firm. Ava's fingers curled around the armrest. Something about this didn't feel right. Deborah's hand extended, palm up. "Your ticket, please." Ava hesitated, but handed it over. Deborah glanced at it, before her eyes flicked back to Ava, her forced smile unwavering. "I'm afraid there's been a mix-up. You're in the wrong seat," she said, voice light but laced with finality. Ava frowned. "No, I'm not. My seat is 3A. A hush rippled through the nearby passengers. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A couple exchanged glances. Deborah's smile thinned. "You'll need to move to economy." Ava's stomach twisted. "Why?" Deborah exhaled sharply, as if dealing with a difficult child. "Because first class is reserved for—" She stopped, catching herself. Ava's hands clenched. She knew exactly what Deborah wanted to say. Ava's voice trembled, but she forced herself to speak. "I paid for this seat. My name is on that ticket." She gripped the boarding pass, holding it out like a shield. Deborah plucked it from her grasp with an exaggerated sigh, scanning it with narrowed eyes. Seconds passed, thick with unspoken tension. Ava's heart pounded. She could feel every set of eyes on her. Deborah's lips pursed. "I'll check with the flight supervisor." She turned, but not before muttering, "This shouldn't be happening." Ava wasn't sure if that remark was meant for her or for everyone watching. A low murmur swept through the cabin. Some passengers pretended not to notice, burying themselves in their devices. Others watched with thinly veiled curiosity. A businessman adjusted his tie, but said nothing. A flight attendant near the galley peeked over, but made no move to intervene. 2 rows ahead, a woman slowly raised her phone, angling it just right. Ava swallowed hard. She wasn't just being questioned. She was being judged, and nobody was stepping in to stop it. Deborah returned, waving the ticket as if it were a mistake she'd just uncovered. "Sometimes errors occur. Perhaps someone booked this on your behalf?" A soft chuckle came from somewhere in the cabin. Ava's jaw tightened. "I booked it myself." Deborah's condescending smile didn't falter. "I understand, but these things happen. We just want to ensure everything is in order." Ava felt her face burn. The murmurs, the judgment, it all closed in around her. A man, a few seats away, shook his head. "Just let the kid sit," he mumbled. But Deborah ignored him. She was making an example out of Ava, and everyone knew it. Ava's fingers trembled as she gripped the armrests. Did she fight? Demand to stay? What if they forced her off the plane? The pilot's voice crackled overhead. "Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff." Ava glanced at the sealed cabin door. There was nowhere to go. Deborah stood over her, waiting. Ava inhaled sharply, forcing back the sting of tears. She had never felt so small, so helpless. And yet, deep down, a fire had started to burn. Ava Carter adjusted the strap of her backpack, exhaling slowly as she stared at the bustling airport terminal. Her hands tightened around the handle of her suitcase. This wasn't just a trip. It was a milestone. She was flying to meet her father, a well-respected civil rights attorney. He had always been a voice for justice, and she admired him for it. But today, she was on her own. Excitement and unease battled inside her. Independence felt exhilarating, yet strangely heavy. The boarding pass trembled slightly between Ava's fingers as she stepped onto the jet bridge. Her first flight. Her first time navigating the world alone. She adjusted her posture, reminding herself she deserved to be here. Yet the moment she entered the plane, doubt whispered. A flight attendant barely glanced at her ticket before waving her toward first class. Ava swallowed hard, stepping past passengers, already settled in plush seats. She reached a row and took a slow breath. This was just a plane ride, nothing more. Or so she hoped. Ava eased into the wide leather seat, but the comfort did little to settle her nerves. Around her, passengers skimmed newspapers or sipped champagne, their lives untouched by uncertainty. Yet she felt it, the flicker of eyes glancing her way. A well-dressed woman across the aisle raised an eyebrow before returning to her tablet. Ava straightened. She had paid for this seat. Her father had taught her that she never needed permission to take up space. Still, the air felt heavier now. The tension wasn't overt. It was in the small things. The older man's quick glance before turning away. The hushed conversation 2 rows ahead. A flight attendant moved gracefully through the cabin, stopping beside a couple. Their quiet murmurs sent a ripple of unease through Ava's chest. Was she imagining it? Overthinking? Her mother always said she was too perceptive for her own good. But the weight in her stomach told her. This wasn't in her head. She shifted, crossing her arms, as if it could shield her from the silent scrutiny. Deep breath in, slow breath out. Ava glanced out the window, focusing on the endless stretch of sky. This was just another step toward her future, but the feeling of eyes on her never quite faded. And as the plane prepared for takeoff, she couldn't shake the sense that something was about to go wrong. Ava glanced around as the flight attendant moved through the aisle, placing glasses of sparkling water and orange juice on each tray. The crisp white napkins folded neatly beside them made the service seem effortless. Until the cart rolled past her. She blinked, waiting. Maybe she'd been overlooked by mistake. The attendant, a woman with sharp features and a name tag reading Deborah, didn't even glance her way. Ava cleared her throat lightly, but the woman had already turned to the next row. Her hands clenched on her lap. Was she imagining this? Or was she just not worth acknowledging? Ava hesitated, then pressed the call button. A moment later, Deborah appeared, arms crossed. Yes? Ava kept her voice polite. Could I have a blanket, please? Deborah's expression barely shifted. We're still preparing for takeoff. You'll have to wait. Before Ava could respond, a man 2 rows ahead spoke up. Excuse me, could I get an extra pillow? Without hesitation, Deborah smiled. Of course, sir. She reached into the cart and handed it over with a nod. Ava felt something sharp settle in her chest. It wasn't just forgetfulness. It wasn't an accident. And yet, she forced herself to stay silent. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't what it seemed. She turned to the window, watching the runway lights blur as the plane taxied. Don't overthink it. Don't make everything about race. That's what people always said, right? Sometimes things just happen. But why did it feel so deliberate? She stole a glance around the cabin. Everyone else looked comfortable, relaxed. Meanwhile, her mind kept circling back to the missing drink, the dismissive tone, the double standard. Maybe she was being too sensitive. Or maybe, deep down, she already knew the answer. Either way, the discomfort wouldn't fade. The cabin had settled into a quiet hum when Deborah reappeared. This time, she stopped at Ava's seat, arms folded, her gaze unreadable. Miss, can I see your boarding pass? Ava blinked. Excuse me? Deborah's lips pressed into a thin line. I just need to confirm your seat assignment. Ava's stomach twisted. No one else was being questioned. No one else had to prove they belonged. She reached into her bag, hands steady but heart pounding. As she handed over the slip of paper, she saw it. All the passengers were watching now, silent, waiting, like they had already decided how this would play out. Deborah's eyes flicked over the ticket, then back to Ava, the hesitation stretched. "All set," she finally said, handing it back with forced politeness before walking away. Ava's throat tightened. It wasn't just discomfort anymore. It was something heavier, something undeniable. A woman across the aisle gave her a brief, pitying look before turning away. Ava exhaled slowly, willing herself to stay calm. But she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Deborah's voice sliced through the cabin, clear and sharp. "Ma'am, I need you to return to your assigned seat in economy." Ava's chest tightened. What?" The attendant's gaze was cold. "We've had complaints. You don't belong here." Murmurs rippled through the cabin. Heads turned, eyes narrowing, assessing her like she was some kind of intruder. "My seat is right here," Ava said, gripping the armrests. "I have a ticket." Deborah crossed her arms. "First class is for paying passengers. If you can't provide proof, I'll have to ask you to move." A flush of heat crawled up Ava's neck. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an accusation. A public condemnation wrapped in thinly veiled politeness. "I paid for this seat," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Check my boarding pass. Again." Deborah didn't budge. Silence stretched between them, thick and stifling. Ava glanced around, hoping for support, but the only thing she found were blank stares, disinterest, and judgment. She swallowed hard. This wasn't just about a seat anymore. It was about something much bigger. Somewhere behind her, a voice muttered just loud enough to be heard. Maybe she got the ticket another way. The words coiled around Ava's throat like a noose. A dry chuckle followed. Wouldn't be the first time. Her hands clenched into fists. She turned, scanning the rows, searching for the speaker. But all she saw were averted eyes, smirks half hidden behind hands. Anger flared in her chest, battling the sting of humiliation. "I paid for this ticket," she said, louder now, daring anyone to contradict her. "Just like everyone else." But the damage was done. That one whisper had poisoned the air, leaving a stain she couldn't erase. Deborah exhaled, tapping her pen against her palm. "If that's true, then let's see some proof." Ava's heart pounded. She had nothing to hide, but it didn't matter, because in their eyes, she was already guilty. Ava scanned the cabin again, desperation flickering in her chest. A few passengers had their phones out, recording, capturing the moment like it was some kind of spectacle. Others whispered, shaking their heads, but not a single person spoke up. Not one. Her stomach twisted. She locked eyes with the woman across the aisle, silently pleading. But the woman just glanced away, pretending to adjust her seatbelt. Ava's pulse roared in her ears. This was it. This was how it happened. Not with shouting, not with outright hostility. Just quiet acceptance. Just people choosing silence when it mattered most. Her voice wavered. "I belong here." Deborah gave a tight smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Then prove it." Ava reached for her bag, fingers trembling. But before she could open it, Deborah reached for the intercom. And suddenly, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. Ava's breath caught as Deborah's fingers hovered over the call button. "Wait," Ava said, her voice cracking. "Just wait." She dug through her bag, yanking out her phone. Her father's voice rang in her memory. "Don't let them push you around, baby girl. You worked for everything you have." Her grip tightened. "My dad booked this seat." Deborah arched an eyebrow. "And?" Ava's heart pounded. "Call him. He has the receipt, the confirmation, everything." A flicker of something, doubt, crossed Deborah's face, but it was gone in an instant. "That won't be necessary." Her hand reached for Ava's bag. "I think we've wasted enough time." Ava's stomach dropped. This wasn't about proof. It never was. She turned toward the other passengers, one last time. "Are you all seriously okay with this?" No one answered. Deborah straightened. Security will meet us when we land. Ava's hands curled into fists. Her father always said to stand her ground. But what was she supposed to do when no one would stand with her? Deborah tugged Ava's bag from under the seat, her movements brisk, practiced, like she'd done this before, like it was routine. Let's go, she said, stepping aside. Ava's chest burned. She could fight. She could demand the pilot intervene and demand to speak to someone else. But what would that change? All she saw were blank stares. All she felt was the weight of 1,000 assumptions pressing down on her. Her fingers curled around the armrest. Her voice was steel. I'm not moving. Deborah's eyes darkened. The whispering passengers, the recording phones, the judgment. It was all closing in. Ava exhaled, her hands shaking. This was her final chance. She just didn't know if she had the strength to take it. Ava's vision blurred as she stared at her phone. Her father's number was right there. One tap, one call. But what would that do? Would they even listen? Deborah loomed over her, fingers still gripping the intercom. Ava swallowed the lump in her throat. She could call. She could fight. She could prove them wrong. But the truth was, they didn't care. She pressed the phone to her chest, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Don't let them push you around. She lifted her chin. And then the cabin door clicked open. And the nightmare wasn't over yet. Excuse me, miss. I need you to return to your seat. Ava barely had time to register the voice before Deborah, the flight attendant, loomed over her. The weight of the moment pressed down as murmurs rippled through first class. Ava's grip tightened around the armrest. This is my seat. Deborah's gaze didn't waver. First class is reserved for ticketed passengers. We've received complaints. The sting of the words landed hard. You think I'm lying? A hush fell over the cabin. Strangers started, assessing, doubting. Ma'am, Deborah said, voice clipped. If you can't provide proof, I'll have to ask you to move. Ava inhaled sharply, heat creeping up her neck. Check my boarding pass again. Deborah sighed, shifting her stance. A man in the adjacent row adjusted his tie, avoiding eye contact. Ava's chest tightened. She knew this wasn't about a seat. It was about who they thought belonged here. She reached for her bag, but before she could retrieve her ticket, a voice cut through the air like a blade. Maybe she got the ticket another way. The words sent a chill through Ava's spine. A dry chuckle followed, buried under faux politeness. Her fingers clenched around the strap of her purse. Another way? The implication dripped with venom. I bought this ticket, she said, voice sharp but controlled. Like everyone else here. A middle-aged woman, a few rows ahead, exchanged a glance with her husband. No one spoke, but the accusation hung thick in the air. Deborah didn't acknowledge the comment, but the damage was done. Doubt festered in the cabin, shifting the weight of perception against Ava. She turned to the attendant. Are you going to let them say that? Deborah exhaled. I just need to verify your seat. Not a denial, not a defense. Ava's stomach twisted. This wasn't just an accusation. It was permission for everyone to believe the worst. She scanned the faces around her. Some passengers averted their eyes, pretending they weren't listening. Others watched, phones out, recording. Ava's throat tightened. They weren't just witnesses. They were spectators. She turned to a young woman across the aisle. You saw me sit down. Tell them. The woman hesitated, fingers gripping the edge of her tablet. Her gaze flickered to Deborah, then to the murmuring passengers. I don't want to get involved. Ava's stomach sank. Of course not. The elderly man beside her shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. A businessman in the corner continued scrolling through his emails, as if nothing was happening. Indifference was louder than any accusation. Deborah straightened. Ma'am, I need you to comply. Ava's pulse pounded. This wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about whether anyone cared enough to listen. "My father booked the seat," Ava said, voice tight. "I can call him. He has the confirmation, the receipt, everything." Deborah's lips pressed into a thin line. "That won't be necessary." But Deborah's fingers hovered over the intercom. "Security will handle this once we land." The walls felt like they were closing in. Ava's breathing quickened. "You're treating me like a criminal over a seat?" Deborah's voice was smooth, detached. "It's a procedure." Ava turned to the crowd again. "You all see what's happening, right?" A man in a navy suit sighed. "Just do what she says." Ava blinked. "You think I should prove my right to be here, while everyone else just belongs?" Silence. Deborah extended her hand. "Your bag." Ava stared at it. Her dignity dangled in the balance. One call, one moment, that's all it would take. But would it even matter? The bag slipped from Ava's grasp as Deborah took it, her expression unreadable. "You can follow me," Deborah said, stepping aside. Ava's hands trembled. She could fight. She could demand the pilot intervene. But what good would it do? She turned to the onlookers, the silence heavier than any insult. Her voice cracked. "You're all okay with this?" No one answered. No one moved. A lump rose in her throat. She wanted to scream, to make them see, but in their eyes, she was already an inconvenience, another. A choice hung before her: walk away, or force them to acknowledge the truth. She took a shaky breath. Her next move would define everything. Ava's fingers hovered over her phone. Her father's number, one tap away. Would it change anything? Would his voice cut through the doubt like a lifeline? Or would they just ignore him too? She pressed the phone to her chest, pulse erratic. Deborah adjusted her stance. "Ma'am." Ava looked up, blinking away the sting in her eyes. She had a choice. She could shrink beneath the weight of their judgment, or she could make them see her. Her grip tightened around the phone, and then the cabin door clicked open. The nightmare wasn't over yet. The cabin is in chaos. Flight attendants scramble, their voices hushed yet urgent as they try to contain the damage. Apologies rain down like empty confessions. "Miss Carter, we deeply regret this misunderstanding," one says, forcing a tight smile. "Please let us make this right." Ava stands motionless, arms crossed. "Make it right?" "You let her humiliate me in front of everyone. And you watched." David steps forward, his presence commanding. "I expect an official statement from the airline. This isn't just a mistake. It's a symptom of something deeper." The attendants nod rapidly, sensing the weight of their misjudgment. But Ava isn't convinced. The damage has been done, and no shallow apology can erase it. Deborah's hands shake as she steps toward David. "Mr. Carter, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just following protocol." David meets her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Protocol? Or prejudice?" She swallows hard. "Please, I never meant to." Ava cuts in, her voice firm. "You saw what you wanted to see. And when the truth was right in front of you, you ignored it." Deborah's lips part, searching for words, but David steps around her. "Save your apology," he says, his tone like ice. "It's too late." The airline wastes no time in damage control. By morning, a public statement circulates, distancing itself from Deborah's actions. "We take matters of discrimination seriously," it reads. The employee in question has been placed on immediate suspension, pending a full investigation. But the internet isn't buying it. "Convenient timing," one user writes. Damage control at its finest. Ava sees the news flash across her phone. A suspension? That's not justice, but it's a start. She stands before the cameras, reporters buzzing with anticipation. "I'm not here for an apology," she says, her voice unwavering. "I'm here because people like me live this reality every day, and most don't get the chance to speak up." A hush falls over the crowd. Deborah saw me as less, she continues. But today, she learned who I am. A ripple of murmurs follows. She isn't just another headline. She's a symbol of something bigger. And for the first time in hours, she feels powerful. The video spreads like wildfire. Millions watch as Ava stands tall, her words echoing through social media. This is what accountability looks like. One tweet reads, "I've been in Ava's shoes." Another user shares, "This has to stop." Hashtags flood the platforms. Hashtag justice for Ava. Hashtag racial bias in airlines. Hashtag do better. People are angry, but more than that, they're ready for change. Ava refreshes her phone. Thousands of messages. Countless stories. She exhales. This moment isn't just hers anymore. It belongs to everyone who has ever been silenced. And for the first time, she knows they're finally being heard. No one should ever be judged by their skin color. Yet every day, stories like Ava's unfold in silence. If you were in her place, what would you have done? Would you walk away or demand justice? Let's talk. How should situations like this be handled? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever faced or witnessed discrimination? Your voice matters. Let's start the conversation. This story isn't just Ava's. It's reality for many. Help spread awareness by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Together, we can amplify voices, challenge injustice, and create real change. Let's make a difference.